Hello and welcome to our conversations for NFP Week. I'm your host, Peg Hensler, and I'm the Associate Director for Marriage Ministries and Natural Family Planning, NFP, for the Diocese of Trenton. And so in celebration of National Natural Family Planning Awareness Week, we are featuring a different NFP topic, a different fertility appreciation, fertility awareness topic every day of NFP Week. And today's topic is NFP, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Millennials Respond. So it's the Catholic millennial response to NFP, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so today my special guest is Kelly Prioli. She's a young married person, married to Thomas. She just shared with me that she recently moved. So you're not going to see all the wonderful boxes that she promises me are in her house. You're just going to see a nice orderly setup for her. But she is taking the time out of this little bit hectic time to be with us. And so we're very, very grateful. So I want to welcome Kelly and have you just share a little bit about yourself. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be doing this. Yeah, the other side of my camera is a mess, but this side looks really nice.
Really good, really good.
Yeah, so I got married just about a year ago. We're coming up on the 1-year anniversary on July 11th, 7/11.
Congratulations, that's wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, so we got married during the pandemic. It was pretty crazy. I just graduated from Monmouth University with my graduate degree. I have a master's in history. So I ended up coming across this community with the diocese and everything through Christina D'Averso. She's a name that pops up with a lot of everything. So I'm so glad that she set this up for us.
Yes, and I'm extremely grateful too. It is just so wonderful to be with you. So I want you to just tell us a little bit about what it's like for you to be, 1 year married in the Catholic Church. That's kind of countercultural these days. And I know a lot of couples who have not chosen that path. And so can you tell us just a little bit about kind of what that's like for you? What's special about being married in the Catholic Church?
So yeah, I don't know many married couples at this point because all of my friends are choosing to not get married. And I got a lot of pushback from some of my friends of, well, don't you want to, test drive first? Don't you want to figure it out before you get married? So it's been interesting now, 1 year married, and everyone's like celebrating with me, even though before I was getting a little weird looks of like, oh, you sure you want to get married? You sure? I love it. I think it's amazing. People, every time they ask me, oh, it's been a year, how's it been? It has been fabulous. I love it. There's obviously hard times, but the structure that we have and the bond that we've built has been, a rock for us from the beginning, that there's so much trust. And we ended up meeting in church, oddly enough. So I went to St. Rose High School in Belmar. He went to Christian Brothers Academy, CBA in Lincroft, but we both went to St. Catherine of Siena Parish in Farmingdale. And so he was homeschooled growing up. I went to Catholic school, St. Veronica's in Howell. We never really crossed paths until my youngest sister started getting homeschooled. My mom was like, I'm one of 6. And my mom, after the first 5, was like, I can do it. So she took the youngest one, Sarah, she stayed home. She was homeschooled. And so then that homeschooling path crossed. And his youngest brother, he's a family of 8. The youngest brother is now 7. When he was baptized, our family was invited to the baptism. And so we met. We ended up finding out we had a similar group of friends. We went to a birthday party for a friend together in high school. And then we ended up going to prom together, dated through college at Monmouth. And just, we had a very strong prayer life independently. And so it got stronger when we were together. And we just decided, we have this call to get married. And what's the point of putting it off for a few years when it's clearly evident, we're comfortable with it, we're ready for it, and it's been great, we love the structure.
You're the best advertisement for Catholic marriage that we can possibly find. And to have that sense of joy about your marriage and that excitement, that's what people are so attracted to. So you are a living sign of God's love. That's what a sacrament is. And you truly are. You're your beautiful young face and just your youthfulness is just such a powerful life force in the church. You nourish us. And so we're so happy to have you. So along those lines, natural family planning, also known as fertility awareness, and that's family planning naturally without any contraceptives, without surgeries, without anything. And that's embracing and trusting in God's plan for marriage and family. And that's super countercultural, as we know. So when I have to introduce this as a person who does marriage ministry and works with engaged couples and works with millennials often, and now I guess Gen Zers, I guess that's the next group. I'm a baby boomer. I was born in 1958, full disclosure. So working with millennials is really a lot of fun, and I happen to have 3 millennial children. But when I introduce this topic of NFP, I do it from the perspective of, this is one of the greatest things for our marriage, and it's need to know health information, but it also enhances marital communication. And it's one of the things that gives you the upper hand in your marriage, certainly the upper hand in having that grace, which I call God's kind of divine life inside of us. It's like the energy, the driving force in your marriage. It's a superpower. It's a superpower. My son gave me a mug that says, I'm Catholic. What's your superpower? So I love that mug. I can't wait to bring it in, but it's so true. That grace is a superpower, and natural family planning is one of the means to that amazing grace. So I kind of share all that kind of stuff with our young couples. So when you first heard of NFP, kind of where were you in your journey? How were you first introduced to this amazing science, amazing medicine, amazing way of life?
So my mother practiced it. When I was little, we didn't necessarily have like a talk of this is what NFP was. It's called NFP, or it's called whatever, there's different methods and names. But I knew growing up, my mother had a thermometer that we weren't using when we were sick. Like, it was not a sick thermometer. And I knew that she had this stack of papers in her dresser. I would see those. I didn't really know what it meant. She was just kind of like, oh, I just need to, take my temperature every morning. I'm like, am I sick? Are you sick? Like, what's the reason for the temperature? She's like, oh, we're just, tracking things. I remember that from when I was little. Like, it was always something I was around. It was never something that I personally began tracking until I got engaged, which at this point was like 2 years ago. I went to Catholic school growing up. I learned about it in school that, at least from what I remember, a very kind of superficial, here's what it is, how you do it generally. The Catholic Church approves it, moving on. Right. When you get married, you'll get to that. Then when I got engaged, it became a very serious conversation of like, okay, well, if we're still in school, at least I was still in school, he's looking to potentially go to graduate school. He wants to do something maybe in government or law. We're not fully sure. But if we're looking to not be financially stable for a little while, we might want to postpone children, or at least plan to. Obviously, we're still open to it, but we might want to plan to not have some children yet. And so it became a very serious conversation. So my mother sat me down, like, okay, like, here's how it works, what it is, and in a bit more of an informal setting. And then my mother-in-law used to be a teacher, like a formal instructor of NFP. So then I got a formal lesson from my mother-in-law, which my husband thought was the weirdest thing ever. I just sat at her table and she just told me about it, and he could not stand in the room. He needed to leave. It's like, this is so weird. I can't even imagine having this kind of conversation with your dad,
Right.
Like, well,
yeah.
Our bodies are different. Like, it's just something I'm used to. It's something I'm used to talking about, So I got formal lessons from my mother-in-law as well.
Wow.
I got books, I got, handouts. You get week 1, week 2, try this exercise, practice this. So I got all of the different sources of information. To this day, if I have any random question, I'll just text my mom of like, hey, what does this mean? How do I make sense of this? And I started implementing it once I got engaged. But we might get into this a little later, but I personally have very irregular cycles. So even though I was tracking for a year, I only had maybe like 7 cycles to work with. And generally you want to have like at least 9 to be comfortable, was at least one of the packets that my mother wanted.
Sure. Yes.
You want like 9. So I'm still learning, still working through it. But I still use it to this day. And I'm getting pretty comfortable with it at this point. But yeah, I was exposed to it from a young age. And I have received informal and quasi-formal training on it at this point of how to implement it.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. And of course, people who use NFP, they have an advantage that they can determine or find hormonal imbalances. They can get to the root cause of things that could affect your ability to conceive, that could affect your fertility. So it's really, that's where we talk about the need to know information. We say that couples need to know this. It's really something that is just, I think all couples should take the class. I can't force them to practice it, but I certainly can really encourage them to take a class because it's important information for everybody. So yeah, that's great. So now you know that you have somewhat irregular cycles, which is going to help you tremendously in every way, within your marriage, within your communication. Your husband will have better understanding what's going on with your moods and everything. Really good, really important information. So we know that NFP is countercultural. We know that it's still not used by very many Catholics. We get that. I totally understand that. But I also know that more and more young couples are becoming interested in fertility awareness, fertility appreciation. We see that it's even entering into all the secular medical information, the information that you used to never be able to find it except from Catholic sources. Now it's kind of integrated itself into medicine in general. So that's great news. So I guess my question is, why do you think it might be that more people are starting to embrace this? Because we know it's challenging. We know it's a lot of work, but we know that couples, we're starting to see an increase in couples using it. So what do you think? Why do you think that might be?
Personally, I think there's a big shift in society lately. I mean, you see it in the grocery stores. Everything's organic. Everything's all natural. Honestly, it's not as countercultural to say you want all natural things or organic things necessarily. It's all over the stores. But now that's starting to leak into everyday life.
It really is.
And people are, considering, well, do I really need the same dish detergent? Do I really need the same laundry detergent as I've always used? What about, the clothes that I wear? I got to make sure it's sourced from a good place. And it's going beyond even necessarily just the food that it was a couple of years ago. And now it's reaching into, our bodies. Well, do I really need this surgery, or could I do it through a shift in my diet? How can I address some of the symptoms of this, chronic illness through natural means? And so NFP just kind of falls into that of, well, your body's working the way it's supposed to work, at least for a majority of people. And all you need to do is become mindful of it and track it and watch it. Like, your temperature is going to rise or fall according to exactly what your body's supposed to be doing. Your mucus is going to change based on your level of fertility, and you're able to just become aware of it and not need to say, what does this mean? Go to the doctors, get a pill, and just force a balance of some sort.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's true. So we can, through NFP, through this practice and science of NFP, women, couples can know based on these observations, these things that they can observe and track. They can know exactly what's happening in their fertile cycle. They can know exactly when they're fertile. And so the beauty of that is just unbelievable. It's amazing. But there are challenges. There are real challenges to using NFP. And I think people need to know what the real challenges are, just like in anything else. My daughter and son-in-law bought a Peloton. The Peloton's in their living room. I'm not crazy about that decorating wise, but guess what? They've made a commitment to be on the Peloton every day for a half hour. That's a commitment. Nobody wants to be on the Peloton. At least I certainly don't want to be. So I think that with so many things that are so good for you, they are really challenging, and there's a real discipline here. Not to mention that abstaining from the sexual act sometimes when you maybe haven't seen each other for a while. I mean, that all is challenging, but there's some really amazing benefits. So let's talk about the bad and the ugly. You know, we're talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly. So what is the bad and the ugly about NFP, which is really all the good, by the way?
I think some of the toughest part is the commitment and the fragile nature of your fertility. So if I want to have a glass of wine at dinner, my temperature might be thrown off in the morning. I have to take my temperature every morning. And I can just track that. But once you get comfortable with it, maybe you know, oh, well, I can skip this morning. But then if you lose the habit, and then you're skipping 3 days, and now all of a sudden you don't know where you're at in your cycle anymore. Or at least you know generally, but you can't pinpoint it the same. And that's, you know, with anything scientific, you have to be consistent. You have to do everything the same again and again. And if you want to throw in variables, you need to mark it. You need to keep track of it. And so that it can be a little tough sometimes. And I'll be like, oh, I'll have a drink tonight. And the next night it's like, well, last night was thrown off, so who cares about tonight too? And then I'll have another. And then I'm like 3 days in going, I haven't taken my temperature in a couple days. I should really figure that out. Where am I at? And then beyond that, when, at least for me, planning to abstain from sex for a period of time so that we don't get pregnant, or at least we plan not to get pregnant, can still be tough. You know, it's like, well, I just want to like be with my husband.
Yeah, of course.
It can be tough in those ways, you know, and especially in a society that values sex so highly and at the same time doesn't. It's hard to relate to people saying, you know, like, oh, well, you know, I can't have sex for X long if you're talking with like your girlfriends, or, oh, I need to take my temperature in the morning, or, oh, I don't know if I'm gonna have that drink tonight. I want to, you know, keep my temperature regular tonight. No, like, temperature, what do you mean? So I don't have a lot of friends that necessarily can relate to that either. So
Sure.
yeah, it can be tough in those ways, but they end up being fairly minimal issues compared to the positive results I've gotten.
That's
out of
right.
it.
Absolutely. I would confirm that 100%. Certainly in my case, the same. It was there were times when it was challenging. There were times when we failed. We failed to trust God in our journey. We share that with the engaged couples. But we can say with 100% conviction that when we trusted in God, when we used NFP regularly, those were the times of those were the highest grace times. So they were the greatest times in our marriage. That's when our marriage was so strong. And to this day, now that we're no longer in the fertile cycle, now that we're having grandchildren in these days, we can see how wonderful and amazing, but we recognize that there's challenges. And what we say to couples is, if you lose focus, if you just get back on the horse. Pope Paul VI said that in his beautiful document, Humanae Vitae. He said, scientists and medical professionals, you've got to develop a really good science for these couples, because we're confirming what the church has always taught, that the best thing for marriage is openness to life, natural family planning, according to God's plan. Okay, so now step up and do it. They did. We have the science, we have the technology, we have everything. And now it's the commitment and the discipline. But when you fail, which sometimes you may, whether it's by not quite doing the practice of it or by not quite trusting in God, then get back on the horse. And it is the greatest thing. And I am here to testify to it. And so are you, Kelly. So I thank you and Thomas for your witness. I know Thomas is here in spirit, but I really, really thank you for taking the time away from your boxes, away from your move, and your house looks great so far. And maybe we'll have a tour of it later at some point in the future. We'll invite you back and we'll see all the boxes put away. But I am so grateful for you today, for your honest and open sharing about natural family planning. And so what would you say as we finalize our talk today? What would you say to young couples about NFP? How would you encourage them?
To young couples specifically. I would say some of the best advice that I got as a young couple with NFP was don't have just the woman do it. If she's not the only one tracking her cycle. And so as a young couple, if you don't want to do it, you're not going to do it. If you do, you're going to do it. Don't leave all the weight on just her. I take my temperature in the morning. I'll write the notes from the day of, cervical mucus and everything like that. And I'll write those notes. But he writes down the temperature so that he always has to check the chart and be aware.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
I received that, and that's been super helpful. I mean, he even said it last night. I was stressed out about the move, and he said, "I'm not sure if you're stressed out about the move or if we're at X point in your cycle." And I was like, "That's a good consideration I hadn't thought of," because he was aware of it too.
Yes, it's so enlightening for the husbands to know what's going on. That's right. It's the marital communication. It's both people taking responsibility for fertility appreciation, fertility awareness. I think that's amazing. And that's why it enhances communication so much. And that's one of the reasons that makes marriage so much stronger. So I want to thank you again, Kelly, for coming on today. Keep up the great work. Stick with it. It's going to be great. It's a great journey. And get out there and be that poster child for Catholic marriage, as you already are. As I said, there's no greater advertisement for Catholic marriage than you and your husband. So we are so happy to have you, and we're happy to have the Diocese of Metuchen share you with us. And so I want to thank everybody for being on this video with us today. And you can find out all kinds of information about natural family planning by going to dioceseoftrenton.org/natural-family-planning. That's our landing page, but you'll find all the videos there, links to the videos. You'll also find that we have a page just for couples. And actually, we have all kinds of pages for couples. So everything you need for natural family planning, for all the different methods, it's all there for you. So again, we thank you. Kelly, thank you, and God bless you. And God bless and take care.
Thank you.